Welcome to another episode of the Hawk's Nest of Peak Performers, the podcast where I gather high performers from various fields and have conversations that seek to empower people to pursue their passions. I am Ryan, the RyBred Hawks, and today I have Adie Smith. All right. Hey, Adie, how you doing?
Doing good. Yeah, can't complain too much. So we're doing pretty good.
Yeah. Nice. All right. So, of course, so we worked together recently, and so I kind of have this hat just because of that for our memories from our
Yeah.
summer camp we just did together, and you were the graduate assistant for that. I actually looked into what that meant because I remember you said you forgot. So we did a fun little summer camp together, so and got to know each other more, and met beforehand at our graduation too. So that was cool.
Yeah.
But tell the viewers about yourself. Tell us about you.
I feel like that's a broad question. It's like, where do I start? So I guess basically, I would classify myself as a snowboarder. Like that's
Mm-hmm.
my sport
Right.
and my passion. And I've been in it for, gosh, I started when I was 16, so 20 plus years,
Mm-hmm.
probably now or more. That just ages me. But and then recently I went through the sports psychology program. That's where we've connected,
Mm-hmm.
and got studying in sports psychology and how the mind works and how that can enhance our performance. Because I myself went through a lot of mental blocks,
Right.
and things that were holding me back. A lot of times fear, some other things as well.
Right.
And then I am also a snowboard coach, and I coach
Mm-hmm.
all levels of competitors, several that are high performing, some that are Paralympian snowboarders. And, there's times where they're training and riding really well on hill
Mm.
or training, but then when they get out to competition, things kind of fall apart for them.
Right.
You can hear that thunder or not.
Oh, that was thunder.
Yeah.
Wow.
um, yeah, so and it made me question, what can I, as a coach and just as a snowboarder or competitor and rider myself, what can I do to enhance um or get through those mental blocks that in that fear. So that's why I started studying the psychology aspect of
Mm-hmm.
it.
Yeah.
So,
Oh,
yeah,
nice.
I mean, there's so much more I could tell you. I just, yeah, not sure where you want
Well, I
to.
yeah, I'm like, where do I go from here? And there's so many ways we could go. But I mean, you mentioned that you had some performance blocks that you found with sports psychology and stuff. What were some of those?
Ooh, I actually haven't thought about this for a while. I think the main one that pushed me into the program, I was already interested in it and
Right.
looking into it because I have a background in psychology as well in my
Mm-hmm.
undergrad and behavioral science. Um, and so I think the one that really pushed me to, hey, I want to really start studying this was going through injury.
Okay.
Um, I think this is a lot for a lot of people, right? Is that injury
Yeah.
and it's setting you back.
Mm-hmm.
And I came back from that injury wanting to be at that same level that I was snowboarding at before I got injured.
Right.
Wasn't happening. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
and that plays with your mind, right? So
Right.
you start feeling that you should be at this level.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, then you're less of a snowboarder or less of a coach or less of a rider. And then how
Mm-hmm.
that plays into kind of your self-worth and your self-confidence, right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of I wanted to really, because there was a point where I was just so frustrated. I wanted to throw the towel in.
Yeah. What kind of like support system did you have? Like, I'm getting that like you were injured, you're trying to get back. Like, what support did you have for getting back from the injury?
Yeah, I mean, of course you have like the physical therapist, right? But
Mm-hmm.
they're not so much like I mean, like they could be the emotional support somewhat.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's my parents, my friends. But a lot of my parents, my friends, they're not snowboarders themselves or athletes or high performers, right? So they try to understand, but they didn't quite understand.
Right.
And I had one good friend that was a snowboarder and at the level that I was, and
Mm-hmm.
she was really helpful.
Right.
And there's also times where I felt that because she hasn't experienced the same um, level of injury, she didn't quite understand that.
Right.
I'd say at that same level, right? Um,
Mm.
so it was, I think that was part of it, right? Though I had people to talk to and stuff, but there was no one that really quite understood exactly what I was going through.
Yeah. What was the injury?
Oh, so okay, so maybe I should start with the injury.
I should have
Like the
asked that
whole
too.
story too, that's a
Yeah.
good point. So I was hitting probably a 50-foot jump, and I overshot it about 20 feet too. So I overshot the landing
Wow.
and I think I almost hit like the flat. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but when I took off, I knew I was going too fast. And so
Mm-hmm.
I turned my shoulders, which is a no-no in snowboarding.
Mm-hmm.
You'll rotate, right?
Right.
So in the air, I rotated. Um, so my back was facing the landing. And so
Ooh.
when I landed, I caught my hill edge.
Mm-hmm.
And you catch it, it just like flings you back like a fly swatter kind of, right?
Oh, yikes.
So I knocked myself out. Um, and I don't the last part I remember was just right before I took off the jump.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I first came to, like, um,
Mm-hmm.
it was I was more concerned about my head. I had just been knocked
Mm-hmm.
out, unconscious. Didn't really realize my ankle. So it was an ankle injury actually.
Right.
And I thought it was just a sprain because I've had several sprains before.
Mm-hmm.
And this sprain or this injury it's called an osteochondral injury. And it's kind of like a break in the joint of the bone and the cartilage, like the bone and the cartilage breaks off in the joint.
Oh.
So I had like bone and like floating around in the joint. And then it kind of compresses the joint area.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of times people misdiagnose it because it's really kind of complex or complicated and they think it's a sprained ankle.
Oh, really? So they would.
So
Oh,
I went
yikes.
months I went months thinking, oh, like, it's a sprained ankle, but it every once in a while, like it would just swell and the swelling wouldn't go down. And I was fine, like I should probably go get this checked out.
Right. So
Um
so when you fell, you came to, but and you came to right there. Like you didn't like go to the hospital or something like immediately or wake up in a hospital or anything, right? Or did you?
no, yeah. So what I was actually coaching that day. And luckily I had a second coach with me, which is really rare. We usually don't do that, but for whatever reason, we decided to kind of co-coach that
Hmm.
day. So so I was with the athletes, the coach, and so when I came to, the other coach was standing behind me.
Mm,
I don't know if you've been unconscious yourself or talked to those who have,
no.
but it almost
Hmm.
feels like you're dreaming, like you
Yeah.
going through like and then you wake up. I felt like I was waking up in bed, right? I had no idea what was going on, where I was, and it took me a minute to realize um
Hmm.
where I was, what was going on. I had to ask them, like, what just happened? They had to
Hmm.
remind me, and then I finally was able to remember most of it, but except for that,
Hmm.
I have no recollection of once I left the jump, which is
Right.
probably a good thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah.
Dang. So you
Um,
woke up and then you just kind of, okay, I have a sprained ankle, and then just kind of went about your day for a while, or went about your
uh,
life in a way, not
so
maybe the day.
I woke up and I was luckily the park, like where the jumps are, was pretty close to the bottom of the
Hmm.
mountain. And
Right.
so, they're like, oh, should we call ski patrol? Should we get, and I know I'm okay. And I kind of feel like I have to be tough like that for whatever reason.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I got up and rode down, but luckily there was the first aid there was right at the bottom there. So I went in there and had them, kind of check things out.
Hmm.
I don't even sure if I mentioned my ankle. I don't remember, but I remember walking to the car thinking, oh, my ankle's a little bit sore. And
Mm,
I thought it was just another sprained ankle because I've had several
right.
sprained ankles in my life, in my career. But
Dang.
the swelling just didn't go down. I think the moment where I was like, okay, this is not normal was when
Hmm.
I was laying in bed and the bed, like my bedspread, the weight of my bedspread would cause pain.
Ooh, the weight of it. The bed's.
Yeah.
I don't know if unless you have a weighted blanket, that's definitely not
Yeah, that's the
normal.
thing. It's not even weighted, right? It's just a regular bedspread.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Oh man.
that's moment I was like, this isn't normal. But
Yeah.
it took luck. So this is kind of, I don't know if you want me to keep going with this whole injury story. It's a kind of a
Hmm.
long story. Um,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I think what I'm interested in now is, yeah, I guess the recovery process and like what you learned from it, or maybe you didn't learn in that moment, but once you kind of got into sports psychology, what you really learned from it at that point.
Well, okay, so I going through it, it's hard to sometimes realize what you learned from it, right? Until you
Yeah.
like step back and look at it.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the one thing that I really pulled away from the injury is that being able to relate to people that,
Mm.
'cause I mentioned that before, like my support system, I don't think they quite understood like what I was going through because they hadn't
Yeah.
experienced that injury and going through it and trying to get back
Hmm.
away from it. Not away from it, but through it.
Yeah.
And so I think that's one of the like things I'm grateful for from the injury is
Hmm.
being able to relate and understand. And I
Uh,
think it gave me more understanding of a lot of things that going like back to the psychology part and working with
hmm.
people that have gone through injuries and those who even haven't, right?
Right.
A lot of times they feel that they should be performing a certain way or a certain
Right.
level.
Yeah.
Um, and when they're not, then they get hard on themselves, right? And then
Yeah.
that plays into their confidence, their focus, their anxiety, and all
Yeah. But
things.
what about like once you get diagnosed with the injury and the doctor gives you your timetable, is it something that like maybe you and others just don't believe? Like, oh no, I should be good by now? Or is it they reach that timetable and still aren't where they want to be?
So are you asking like for me or for in
I
general
guess
for
in
them?
I
Or
guess for you, yeah, we'll start with that and then we can go kind of more in general.
yeah, I think for me, I had a knee injury. I think was it 10 years or 8 years, somewhere around there before this ankle injury. And I bounced back from it pretty quickly.
Right.
Um, and so I think I went into this injury thinking that I'd bounce back
Mm-hmm.
fairly the same way. And it
Right.
did not happen that way. Um, and there were some things like for the first injury, the knee injury that were hard and I knew that like I had to work through, but it bounced back quick. I don't know if it's because I was younger or because it was a different injury, probably both.
Yeah, probably a little bit of both.
Yeah. But this ankle injury was a lot more complex.
Hmm.
Um, and I think the moment where I was cleared to be back on snow.
Hmm.
Um, and then it just wasn't going the way that I felt that it should, or it should go. That's when I started getting frustrated.
Mm,
Um,
yeah. But did they tell you they're like you're cleared to be on snow, but you still got to work back up, or you're just like I'm snow, I'm back?
it's it's interesting because, well, the orthopedic doctor tells you like it clears you.
Mm,
I'm still going to like I was still going to physical therapy, and
right,
like my physical therapist would tell me, well, you're still not as strong in your ankle, like,
right.
and I think she was saying that strength plays a
Hmm.
lot with like how much you can retract, or I don't remember, but they say things to you that kind of um they bring you back to the reality or point
Hmm.
things out like it's okay that it's not this way, but
Yeah.
in your mind that you still
Hmm.
are
That's
hopeful or want it to be that way or it should be
yeah. That's
should.
kind of what I was wondering. Like, why is it so hard, do you think, for people to really like know, like accept that it takes time, longer than they want. Even if like a professional right there is telling you, you're not 100% yet, but you're getting down on yourself that you're not 100%. Why
Yeah,
is it so hard?
that's that's a good question, and I think I like my mind goes to that it's almost, I feel like for me and those athletes that I have worked with through this
Mhm.
sort of stuff, it's almost like we feel there's an image that we have to keep up.
Mhm. Yeah.
And if we go out there and we're not keeping that or upkeeping that image of our
Yeah.
ability level,
Mhm.
somehow it says that we're less than.
Yeah. And I get that. It is hard because you see, I mean, I'm a big football fan, and sometimes you see these athletes that bounce back crazy fast, and it is like this weird anomaly, like ACLs are big, and like when, someone comes back the next year and they're just killing it. And it's like everyone wants to hold themselves to that, but like for the most part, it takes like over a year of like, but once you're on the field again to recover. So it's, yeah, it's tough, I'm sure.
Yeah, it's interesting that I think rationally a lot of people like we realize this that hey, it takes time. We're not going to be at that
Mhm.
level right away, but we're still somehow fighting against that inner mind, like
Right.
irrational
Yeah.
thinking is coming into play, and then
Right.
it takes kind of a hold of us and it runs with us.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us aren't able to recognize it and then to be able to reframe it or to bring
Mhm.
it back to the rational side of
Yeah.
it, right? So,
Yeah. So where do the mental skills come in then?
I think so. I mean, the first thing I think about is to recognize the way that you're thinking. Like, hey,
Mhm.
we're thinking a little bit irrationally, or we're not rationally realizing that it's okay
Mhm.
that we're not performing at the level because of these reasons, the ones that you mentioned, right? Like it takes time, we're not as strong, like it takes sometimes a year, and that's okay.
Right.
Recognize the way that we're thinking and start reframing that.
Mhm.
Reframing meaning um giving us a little grace within ourselves, right?
Yeah.
Giving us and recognizing those reasons that we're not, it's okay that we're not performing at that
Right.
level.
Yeah.
I mean, it can get, it's really complex, really. Like it can,
We could go so many directions, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting talking about injury and such because I was just catching up on some of my PDSs, and Carrie Cheadle Jackson saw hers. Are you a fan of hers?
I love Carrie.
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
everyone's a fan of Carrie.
Yeah, I think so. I think I think so. Definitely set a great tone as my first professor in the program. And I
Yeah.
forget, were you in that Mind Master class? Did you take her Mind Master class? I
Yeah.
th- I
I
thought
wasn't
so.
there very often. I think I was able to be there for two, maybe three, because
Hmm.
I was just traveling a lot, like
Hmm.
travel coaching.
Yeah.
I was like out of country, or I didn't have time. Like the time of it was just not working for me. But I watched all the recordings.
Yeah, I still have to watch like two more, I think, because I had to stop going to at some point. And I thought I remembered that painting was what it was. I'm
Oh,
like,
this one
the
here.
painting, that's what brought back, and it wasn't until maybe like our last internship meeting on Zoom, and I'd remembered where I'd seen it. I'm like, oh, and I saw it recently in Mind Master. So I think we're in at least one together at the same time.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, speaking of which, something that I found in her PDS that she said, and I wish I was there to ask her more, so I'll kind of ask you what you think. Is she said that an athlete with mental skills training can always, and this is where like I don't know, maybe she didn't say always, but I took it as can always come back mentally and physically stronger from injury. What's your thoughts on that?
Well, this is something that I bring up to the athletes I work with too, is that
Hmm.
um we may be coming back, like I think we're coming back stronger in some ways that we may have not
Hmm.
otherwise,
Right.
right? So I mean, I looking at my situation, I'm still not riding the level that I was before I was injured, at least not in my head or my mind. I'm not.
Right.
I think I'm stronger in so many other aspects.
Hmm.
Um, and then those play into like the snowboarder and the athlete that I am. So it
Hmm.
may look differently,
Right.
but I do like I think I would agree with that, that we come back stronger.
Mm-hmm.
It may look differently,
Mm.
but I still think we do come back stronger because we grow through that experience and that challenge and that hardship
Right.
that is injury.
Yeah.
So that's my take on it. Um, and I think that's another thing that comes up too for a lot of people is that it may look different.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean necessarily that it's worse than
Mm-hmm.
just different.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think there are certain injuries that physically it just might be impossible, even with all of our advances in science and such. It's amazing now just how many things that were like you're done before, or now you're still in it. But I guess overall, if you kind of have physical and mental, hopefully your mental shoots up a bunch and your physical recovers, but overall you're better because you have your mental skills that you've learned throughout that, right? Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, just some of the skills that I've learned, is when I do get hard on myself, like, oh, I'm not writing that well, like I'm able to recognize it,
Mm-hmm.
to remind myself, like, hey, like, well, I've gone through this and this and this.
Right.
That kind of it helps me to reframe the situation.
Right.
Or I realize that I'm like making stories up in my head that are like, oh, everyone's judging me because I'm
Mm-hmm.
not writing as well, and this or that, and I recognize like I don't know what they're thinking.
Right.
It's projecting these thoughts that my brain is telling me.
Yeah.
And that helps too, I think, like, recognizing that I don't know that they're thinking that. There's no way
Yeah.
to prove that. I mean,
Right.
I asked them, but even then they could tell me no, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Um, so things like that. I think my mental skills are a lot stronger going through the injury because
Mm-hmm.
it's given me these opportunities to practice the mental skills and then also um, recognize the moments
Mm-hmm.
that I need to develop mental skills,
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
or to apply mental skills. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's all good.
Yeah. I
Good
think
stuff.
another fun question. Well, it might be fun. I don't know why. I think it's a fun question that I thought of while we while you're speaking. Is so you went through your injury, and one of the thoughts that you mentioned or doubts that you had was if you're going to be as good of a coach, right? How does that kind of play in? I mean, you don't necessarily need to have ever played the sport or currently play it, in my opinion, to be a good coach, right?
Yeah. So here's the thing with snowboarding that is, I think, different than other sports.
Mm,
When you're out training,
yeah.
a lot of times you're riding the entire mountain training.
Mm,
So you'll need to keep up with the level of the athletes that you're training.
ah, mm-hmm,
Um, and so because of the injury that I've been experiencing, has caused me some pain where I don't keep up as well as I used to.
oh, okay.
Right. So there are moments that we can kind of just stand there or be
Mm-hmm,
kind of in place. Sometimes with a half pipe,
mm-hmm,
they can lap the pipe and we can stand at the bottom or the top and give them feedback each time.
right.
Or a competition, there's always
Mm-hmm,
like we just be in competition and be there. We don't have to ride.
right.
A lot of times when we're training, especially the athletes that I train, which is a lot of border cross,
Mm-hmm,
it's all about getting on the mountain and riding fast and absorbing and being dynamic. And
mm-hmm,
so that's, I think, where
mm-hmm.
a little bit different than
Yeah. Wow,
others.
that's pretty fascinating though. So what do you like you're writing down and you're like talking to them as you're going down? Like how does a coaching
How does that
session
work?
work now? Yeah.
A lot of times, I mean, it just depends. We'll give them tasks and we'll say,
Mm-hmm,
hey, ride like this area or this hill, this slope. Um,
mm-hmm,
and then we'll give them like stopping areas.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes we'll watch from the tops, and then they'll watch from the middle. Sometimes they'll watch from the bottom.
Right.
Just kind of set it up where we can watch them and tell them what to write, how to write, what we're looking for, like, the task,
Mm-hmm.
and then give it somewhere to stop.
Right.
Or sometimes they'll follow us, or
Mm-hmm.
so it all kind of depends. Yeah, that's how we just have to be really We have to really think about what we're setting up, and
Mm-hmm.
stop here, do
Hmm.
this.
Yeah, that's
Probably really
interesting.
different from,
Uh-huh.
say, like soccer or tennis or something, where you can just stand at the field and
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, most of these most of these coaches in like the NFL and stuff, great coaches, but I mean they're in their 60s and half of them are, overweight sometimes.
yeah.
There's no way that they could do any of these drills they're asking them to do. So yeah, that's definitely some cool insight for sure.
Yeah. And there's because the last few years I haven't been able to keep up with the athletes,
Mhm.
like the higher end athletes. I'm doing better now, but anyway. Um,
Mhm.
and so I've kind of the head coach has known that, and he'll put me in places where he knows that it will work, like at competitions, or
Mhm.
they'll work with that too. Because it is true that if you don't have to keep up with the athletes,
Right.
you can just watch and give them feedback.
Yeah, which could probably be still pretty effective in certain, in certain situations, like especially with the feedback instead
Yeah.
of, certain situations. But yeah, that's pretty cool. And how has because you were coaching before you started this program, right? Before you started
Uh-huh.
sports psych. So how is going through the program and now mental skills, being mental skills consultant, or at least having that background, how does that kind of change your coaching?
Yeah, that's hmm. I know it has. I'm just trying to think of specifics right now. I think the observation piece, I think I'm able to pick up easier on when they may be affected by certain things within their mental,
Mm-hmm.
their mental, I don't know what you want to call it, area, whatever.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can pick up on, is their confidence down? Are they
Right.
being hard on themselves? Or pick up on things they say. And I'll be able to work with that, be more
Yeah.
conscientious about it. And then sometimes I'll be able to mention things to them like, hey, like, I think I'll be able to pick up on the fear better, and be able to work through more effectively through that with them,
Mm-hmm.
versus
Yeah.
just do it, just try it,
Yeah.
doesn't work. Um, yeah, I think really it comes down to that I'm able to pick up on things I maybe wouldn't have, understand it, I think, a little more in depth.
Right.
Be
And
able
then
to,
what types of tools could you give? Like instead of like you were just saying like, oh, just do it, just go through, and you seeing that they're scared, how are you going to help them work through that?
yeah, I think first off is to recognize the fear, right?
Mm,
Um, I'm a big believer that you want to accept the emotions that you're feeling,
right.
and to become familiar with them, kind of, the more you accept them, the more you're not pushing back at it anymore. It's just
Right.
there because more a part of you, and then you can shift your focus on what they need to do to accomplish whatever they have, the task in front of them, right?
Mm,
And I kind of start helping them shift that as well, like, hey, let's focus on this or this or this,
mm-hmm.
whatever they're catastrophizing, or there's what ifs, or there's stories that you're making up of what could happen. We can even, talk through that or discuss that, or
Yeah.
uh, um so we're not ignoring that fear,
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of bringing it to the forefront, working through it, and then being able to refocus them back on
Right.
what's most effective in front of them.
Yeah. How many athletes that you've worked with do you think like wouldn't have reached their potential if they didn't have someone to help them through that?
Oh, these are good questions. Like, there's things like I haven't even thought about. Like, I haven't thought through to this extent, right? So I haven't thought it like on the spot, which is good. I don't know. I don't know if there's. I don't know if I can really give like
Yeah.
an answer. No, probably a handful at least.
Yeah.
And the head coach that I work with, he hasn't gone through like a educational degree or master's in sport psychology, but he's done a lot of his own reading,
Mm.
looking into it, so he understands it quite a bit. So he's really good at it too.
Nice. Yeah.
So even kind of talking with him through things, or we'll recognize things that are going on with the athletes, and we'll, kind of discuss it amongst us, like, hey, what can we do to help them through this, and
Yeah.
I think there's like three, let's see, I can think of like three on the top of my head right now, specifically, that we've kind of been able
Oh,
to work through. So,
yeah.
it's
There you
something.
go.
Um, but I think even if you don't see like this dramatic change, like even just the little steps.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Yeah, the little things add up, and it's the nuances of performance, right?
yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of athletes, a lot of the elite athletes, at least in the past, kind of benefited from either just figuring out a lot of the mental skills on their own, or just having someone who, I don't know, I kind of think sometimes people just tumble into it in a way, like having the right coaches who just happen, like, don't even have a mental skills background. They just happen to, explore these ideas. And I think that's why more and more we're going to see more mental skills trainers to bridge the gaps. But um do you think it's ever like kind of too late for anybody to gain those mental skills?
I think too late, in a sense where maybe they feel that they've gotten to a point where they don't
Hmm.
need it, or they're
Right.
good enough without it.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's ever too late for any athlete to recognize this can benefit me.
Right.
Even if it's just little, you think of like an old dog learning a new trick, whatever
Right.
that thing is, the whole idea of like, if you're old, you can't learn. Well, you can,
Yeah.
right? So even if it's little, like I think it's always something that
Hmm.
we can still work on with athletes.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think the once you get to like a certain level, they'll probably be a little less open to it. Like I find in one of my internships I was at, the people like there's like three people who are like top three of the tournament every time. But I mean, it's our local tournament, right? I mean, they still need to get ranked. They want to go pro, but they want to get ranked. So they kind of think that they're, some of them like, oh, I don't need the mental skills. I already have that. But I'm like, I wish I could sell them on it, because it's like, then why aren't you pro yet? Like
Yeah,
one guy puts in all the hours, so what are we losing here? Maybe it's the mental skills. Just be open to it. Yeah.
right. Well, I think really that the more of an elite athlete that you are,
Hmm.
or you actually are gonna need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think the top of the top, like, it filters out the best of the best.
Hmm.
And I think the best of the best have their mental skills together,
Right.
more so. So
Hmm.
I would guess that they're not advancing because there's something holding them back mentally
Hmm. Yeah,
as
I think
athletes.
so. That's what I would say. The people on the peak, a lot of times, that's what you find. A lot of times the elite ones probably have them somehow, like you said. They could probably still improve them, of course. There's things they don't, but there's just one thing. I don't know, maybe it's one, two, three, but especially I think with some of the gamers I work with, because like they're going to like in-person tournaments for the first time, and not really recognizing like how much their environment's affecting them,
Uh-huh.
compared to like when they're in a more controlled environment. um that's like the biggest difference between, esports and sports, is that I think that, because elite athletes grew up playing their whole lives in front of crowds, in front of parents. They slowly kind of move up from like Pop Warner, where there's some parents around, to high school and the stands are full. And sometimes, especially the elites or at the top colleges, that they get to the NFL, and the crowd and the environment's really nothing. But like a gamer, they're in their room in the local tournament. Okay, there's an adjustment there. But I mean, these tournaments over there are huge. I got to,
I can
that's a
imagine, like, you've
question.
never been in that environment before, how
Hmm.
much it can affect you if you're not like familiar with it. You're just if it's new to you,
Yeah.
affect you a lot.
Yeah. So, I think
Insane.
I hopefully they'll, well, I mean, I think everyone's got their openness to it at some point, but, um, I'm trying to find better ways to sell it. You got any tips on selling mental skills to people who are on the fence or not really open to it?
Yeah, I mean, I always find that tricky too. And
Hmm.
I think what, more what I think of is finding something that they struggle with or something that's challenging for
Hmm.
them. And
Right.
like, oh, well, with mental skills, like we can help with that. And then here's why.
Right.
I think it's really just finding that pain point, whatever
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
And but I think the challenging part is too is that some athletes I don't think they recognize any pain points sometimes too,
Yeah. Or the
right?
wrong ones. A lot of times they're like, "Oh, I just need to practice more." Well, I
Yeah.
don't know. Like you were up, to me, it's like there's stocks, so like 3 stocks to 1. Like you were up 3-1, and then all of a sudden you lost the match. Like what happened? I just need to practice more. Practice what? My techniques. Oh no, your techniques were fine.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. You kind of,
Interesting.
yeah.
I wonder with those athletes,
Hmm.
if you kind of got to point out, well, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
Like, you just be more blunt with them. Here's
Yeah.
why. Try this. And if I'm wrong, then I don't know, like I'll do this, or like
That's a
I
good idea.
because
Yeah.
it makes me think the head coach I work with,
Hmm.
he'll do that a lot with kind of headstrong athletes.
Right.
And he'll point out like, no, like go try it. If I'm wrong, then and he'll give him some kind of ultimatum or whatever. At times he's right, and that's how they
Yeah.
get kind of gets that buy-in. And I'm wondering that would probably work, but you kind of gotta like
Yeah.
not fight with him, but like be like, no, like
It's a good point. I think I'm not super pushy sometimes with it. I'm like, all right, you don't believe me then. All right. Then I'll just leave
yeah.
it at that. So yeah, maybe I'll challenge myself to be a little more headstrong with them and yeah, that's a good idea though. Give them an ultimatum. Maybe they get to do something to
I
me
think
if I
those
fail.
types of athletes or people or parents, going
Sure.
they have to be met with that same
Hmm.
headstrong kind of challenging. I don't know if you want to challenge, but they kind of challenge, like they challenge people sometimes.
Right.
That kind of challenge. I think they have to be met with that in order
Hmm.
for them to respond to that, you know,
Right. Mm.
um, or to kind of pay attention. I think in some ways I think they'll respect that
Yeah.
thoughts. Does that
Mhm.
make sense?
It does. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good point. Nice. Okay.
Just
Um,
there.
there we go. You gave me a mental skills tip, which is part of what's great about this stuff.
Gotta
So
try it myself too, because I'm the same way where I kind of step down, right?
yeah.
But I think I need to recognize those moments too. Like, okay, hold on. Like I need to step up to the same level of this person
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
meet there.
Yeah. If we're gonna help them really meet their potential, they sometimes they need that challenge. Um,
Yeah.
and that's how they respond. I think I really gear towards like at first when I was really in it, I'm like, okay, well, this is my style and it's not going to resonate with everyone, and I'm just going to leave the ones who don't care out. But it's like when I see some of them and I'm like, oh, you have so much potential, I want to help.
Mhm.
Sometimes you got to adapt too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think that's the tricky part sometimes too. We get so comfortable on like how we deal with things or
Yeah.
to step out of that can be so uncomfortable sometimes or challenging, right? But
Hmm.
um,
Yeah. But I think that's an interesting segue to my last little question, which I was wondering how to get this in. But like how do you do that? How do you adapt and like change your style based on the needs of others, while also keeping your authenticity about you?
that's so that's it's a good question. And I think so we had a conversation kind of about in our last week of the internship with the coaches about um the one of the coaches said being mean to the athlete. Um
Right.
we kind of equated it to mean assertiveness, like being a
Right.
and I almost think that it's the intent behind what you're doing.
Hmm. Yeah.
like your values, you're sticking with your values, you're just going about it a different way.
Mm,
And I
yeah.
feel like that's where that dissonance won't appear, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're still staying true to who you are by keeping those values and that intention behind it.
Right.
Maybe their approach just looks different.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that.
Yeah.
Because yeah, your intent is really your core, right? And sometimes how we express ourselves can either be dissonant, like you say, not match, or it can match. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna keep that in mind myself.
I
Yeah.
was thinking through that when we had that conversation
Hmm.
the last week of that internship with the coaches.
Yeah.
And that's really what I kind of concluded. I think really it comes down to like, what is the intent behind what
Hmm.
I'm doing? And
Right.
that intent needs to come with a different approach, but that intent's still there. Like we're
Right.
staying true to who we are and
Yeah.
that authenticity.
Yeah, and I think the words that we label it with can help too, right? Which is something you mentioned, like I don't want to be mean to the person because that has bad connotations and it doesn't match my values. I don't want to yell at them, but I can be assertive, and there's a way of being assertive, and then I keep my intent, and that doesn't have a bad connotation. As being assertive is good to me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think that's where we can meet the athlete and where they need to be met too, to
right.
be more effective with them,
Hmm.
you know,
Yeah.
wherever the athlete is. But sometimes that approach is different and maybe not so much in our comfort,
Hmm.
but it still can be effective and still stay true to who we are. Yeah.
Yeah. And you got a challenge again. Well, challenge is our theme today. I guess
Oh,
it was my day's theme too. Challenge ourselves to get outside of our comfort and really like I think something I notice in my journey to be more assertive is sometimes I do cross the line into like being mean, and like oh man, because intent doesn't always translate to how someone else took it.
yeah.
My intent was to be assertive, but I was taken as being mean. So then I have to come back and reflect and be like, okay, I was a little too far this time. Like, how can I do this different next time? Or sometimes even sometimes I even have debates with myself of like, well,
Yeah.
should I go back like and like, mess around with them and not mess around, but like, tell them like, oh man, I screwed up. I went too far. And sometimes it depends. Like this is me at work where it happens as a, I'm the one of the program managers, and I'll have a conversation with someone and then the word will travel to someone else and they're like, they took it totally wrong, but they don't want me to tell them. I'm like, okay, well, now we got a values challenge because I want to be loyal to my coworker who told me,
Yeah.
but now, or I have to deal with them thinking receiving my message wrong. And I have to just kind of, okay, I'm just going to take this as feedback and be better next time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a good point. Is that probably going to be a lot of moments still to reflect on? Like, how did that
Mhm.
go? What could I have done differently?
Yeah.
And I think as well as to knowing the type of person or athlete, or knowing your athletes or your coworkers,
Yeah.
um, and how they'll respond to certain things,
Yeah.
building that rapport with them, like to be able to trust on whatever that approach is.
Right.
Um, but I think it's tricky, right? It's not one of those simple things, like,
It's not. And
you know,
that's what it's about being a peak performer is it's not straightforward. Just trying your best isn't always good enough. You have to try your best and go back and reflect and be
mhm.
willing that it didn't work and not getting too down on yourself when it didn't work. I mean, it's like so much to it. And but I think kind of going back and being authentic is key and just really reflecting and being honest with yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that goes for the athletes as well, right? Like if
Mhm.
you're, I'm assuming so. Hopefully, some athletes listen to this too. Is like
Mhm.
being able to reflect on those moments that went well or didn't go well.
Right.
What can I learn from this, or what can I do better? What can I take away from this? Um, and maybe it's mental skills that can help, build
Yeah.
that. I don't know, whatever it is, but I think it's just I think it's a good takeaway for everybody.
Yeah.
There's some, and
Yeah.
then if we make a mistake or it doesn't look the way we want it to,
Yeah.
okay, and we can come back and to learn from it and to continue to grow through that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's another good theme. Sometimes we learn most from the mistakes or the hardships. You know, I mean, you learn from your injury, it seems a lot too.
It's just injury's been so like prominent these last couple of years, you know, so
Yeah.
but I feel
Yeah.
like I'm mostly getting through it now. Like it's still there, but yeah, but we're getting through it now. It's gotten
Yeah.
better.
There you go.
And
Nice.
the mental aspect's gotten better around.
Yeah.
So that's the huge part, right?
Hmm.
So yes.
Nice. Well, that's pretty much all the questions I got for you this time, but you got any questions for me? I like to open that up always.
Ooh. Yeah, I mean nothing I feel like I want to ask you something. What is I guess what is like the biggest mental skills you've applied and learned going through the program or,
Hmm.
you know?
Yeah. I think for me, I always start with awareness. It's like it's really like the foundation to me. Because you can't really do anything unless you're aware of it. You can't build your confidence if you're not aware of how confident you are. You can't build your concentration if you're not aware of what you need to concentrate more on and when you get distracted. Um, all kinds of stuff, right? Like you can't I don't know. I can't think of anything else. But anyway, you know,
True,
so
yeah.
yeah, awareness is huge for me, and I think you build that. What helps with awareness is mindfulness from there. I mean, it's just a easy pair. um and it really, when you kind of learn how to be mindful, or maybe not even say learn, because I'm still wouldn't say I'm mindful after practicing it for years. As you get better at being mindful is probably a better way to put it. You can start to be aware of all kinds of stuff, you know, and it makes it easier to become aware of what you are, because in order to make any progress, we need that. And that's probably going back to what some of these athletes or esports players that, you know, think they don't need mental skills, is because they don't have the awareness yet,
Yeah.
of that these things are happening. So when you're kind of practicing mindfulness and working on how to be more mindful and be aware of everything at all times, you know, beyond performance, then it's really going to get the good foundation so that we can start doing mental skills work.
Yeah. I was actually gonna say as well that it goes back to what we've been talking about, you know, being
Mm,
aware that
yeah.
something needs to be changed or
Hmm.
improved or enhanced or whatever it is, that something's not working as well as it
Yeah.
could.
Yeah, and it's really something that athletes can see quick results from. That's like really what, when I'm talking about our first session and when I'm getting to know them, and I kind of start to mention mindfulness. I tell them to pay attention to, like, let's see what we need to work on. Pay attention to when you're performing well and when you're not, and then pay attention to things on how you feel and what you need to do. And I mean, sometimes the next session they come back and they're like, my performance is already a little better because I've paid attention, and I've
Yeah.
found out that when I was doing well, then this was happening. And when I wasn't, then this. And it's like, all right, there we go. We got some awareness. Let's keep going.
Yeah, I would agree with you that I think awareness is that first piece because nothing can change if we don't know what to change. And
Mm-hmm.
awareness brings that information, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. What can I go? I have one more question for you
Of
then.
course.
What what brought you into the program?
Yeah, man, mine is like really just sometimes when have you seen Forrest Gump?
Yeah.
And he's talking about like floating on a floating around like a feather and just kind of taking you where the world takes you.
Uh-huh.
It's kind of like how things work for me, and like what do you call it, synchronicity. I think especially lately I've noticed where like things happen and they lead you to your path. So it was super random. I was out of grad school. I mean, I'd finished my bachelor's and I didn't know what I wanted to do in psychology, really. Like I had no idea. I was
Your
thinking,
undergrad in psychology as well.
yeah, my undergrad was psychology. And I knew getting into it, I knew I liked psychology. I knew I liked how the mind worked, I actually initially thought I wanted to be an MFT, marriage family therapist.
Mm.
I quickly realized no, I don't want that. I think I listen to my own family problems enough, so I don't need to hear
Yeah.
don't need to hear others. But I mean, I knew I was fascinated with the mind and how that worked. But I got through and I was like, oh, maybe social psychology and studying social media and its effects, and just wasn't really clicking for me. And there really weren't a lot of grad schools that really aligned with what I wanted to do. So I had like, I don't know, I think it was a couple years between my undergrad and when I started grad school, because I didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. I was bumping along kind of aimlessly for a
Mhm.
while. And I was a tutor at Southwestern College, at my local community college. And one thing that everyone knows is that I love, or that gets to know me at least, that I love video games and that I love sport, really football in particular. So this student of mine told me, he was a big esports guy, a gamer, and he said, "Hey, did you know about sports psychology? It's this field, and it's a lot of the esports athletes are getting sports psychologists now." And I was like, "Oh, this seems cool. Yeah, I mean, that can combine my two loves, three loves, video games and all of that." So yeah, I definitely researched it, and I looked into the schools that I thought would work. And I still really didn't know what I was getting into. I really had no idea, what it was going to be about. And I started to realize that a lot of the skills I was already using, um, because I have always kind of considered myself a high performer. Like when I do something, I do it well. So like why? Why do I do it well?
Yeah.
And so I figured a lot of that out, and then of course figured out a lot of other skills to help me perform even higher and be able to communicate that to others too. So yeah, I mean, it was just really a match made in heaven. My first professor, like I said, was Carrie Cheadle Jackson. I think she just goes by
She
Jackson
might have
now.
been mine as well for sports
20
psych.
was it fall 2018?
Yeah.
We did start
No, mine
together.
was spring. Mine was spring.
Oh, okay, then no, yeah, because I did verify. I started fall 2018. Yeah, first class, and not only that, she also introduced me to Simon Sinek. That book, Start with Why, which is also just huge. It's part of my philosophy of practice, is starting with why, and that's why I start the podcast with why as well. Just really figuring out what I want to do in life, and it's really like helping people to be happy. And like, people are happy, I think, when they're performing well,
Mhm.
um and they perform well when they're doing something that they love.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where this all goes in. It all kind of blends in, and like, it's the sport itself. Like, yeah, I'm going to work with esports and athletes, but it's really just like a vehicle for me to help find people who are interested in just being the best version of themselves, because that's what I'm obsessed with. Like, I'm obsessed with helping the people just perform at their best. That's it.
Yeah, and I think we had this discussion, sorry, um, within like what 2 weeks ago when we were in
Hmm.
California on an
Yeah.
internship. Um, is that like through sports we can help people be the best version of themselves,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot that like sport can teach us and
Yeah.
provide that vehicle or the vessel
Hmm.
to become the best version of ourselves. So
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that
Oh
conversation.
yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think I also have a passion for that. I love
Hmm.
it um so it just makes you feel so good to know that when you know recognize that you're impacting someone or helping them through something or
Hmm.
differently, that
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great. I mean, so many people are going to apply the skills outside of sport, and I also feel like just like knowing them and like practicing them in everyday life, you're like kind of modeling them. Um, and
yeah.
sometimes things just kind of rub off naturally. And some things, of course, I'm intentional about. And I'll talk to anybody about, mindfulness or, you know, uh, dealing with anxiety. Some of it can apply outside of sport.
Yeah, so much of it, I feel like so much. So
Yeah.
yeah, I love it. I feel like it's such a good field. And
Yeah.
and we're not having to deal with marriage,
Mhm.
family issues.
Yeah, although I mean, sometimes in sessions it can still come up, I'm
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. But
No doubt.
I bet like we'll give them tools that can maybe help with stuff like that too, like
Exactly. Yeah,
indirectly.
referring out and knowing our scope. Like, okay, I'm gonna tell you a little bit about this, and then I'll get you your referral for
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Um, and almost in some ways it is good because some of the people I've given those referrals to wouldn't have taken them if I wouldn't have kind of encouraged it. Like, oh man, my counseling therapy, no, I don't need that. But it's like, hey, I'll do sports psychology, I'll do some mental skills training, and then you can get them out there. So anyway, kind
You
of
build that
random.
awareness for them, like, hey, maybe I do need to work through some things.
Right.
So yeah,
Yeah.
you're leading them to becoming their best selves. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, now also I'll give you a little chance if you have any plugs to throw in about yourself.
Plugs, like meaning
I don't know, you got websites or social
oh,
media or YouTube or
well,
anything?
I you know what? I'm just building all of that. Right now I have mm, a website inside your shred, which is very
Mhm,
specific to snowboarding and the area of extreme sports. But I'm working on broadening that website. Um, it's going to be 80 Smith Peak
mhm.
Mental Performance, but I just haven't gotten that up yet.
Ah,
So
nice.
as of right now, if you follow Peak Mental, or sorry, Inside Your Shred on social
Mhm,
media, or I have a website up as well.
mhm,
Be able to be in contact with me.
mhm.
But I'm hoping to expand that some as well.
Yeah. Well, whenever you do get your other site up and stuff, just let me know, and then I can update the description so that'll be in there. But of course, we'll get Inside Your Shred up in the description for those interested. And yeah, it's been awesome. For me, of course, you could find me. Shoot, I just updated my @ recently. I think it's just @ Ryan the RyBred now. And of course, find this podcast at anywhere podcasts are sold. Hopefully at some point. But for now, we're going to be starting on YouTube and Anchor and hopefully branching out as we get more episodes up. But of course, if you liked what you saw, definitely share it with your friends, your colleagues, your fellow athletes, or just peak performers. All right. Well, thanks for coming in, everyone.